Hi, my name's Leo and I'm a boat builder and a sailor, and with a lot of help from my friends, I'm on a mission to rebuild and restore this 112-year-old classic sailing yacht, Tally-Ho. Now, as always, there's a lot of different jobs going on in the shed and we're all working on various different things, but in this video we're going to be mostly following Patrick and Zeal as they drill and install the keel bolts. We're also going to see the engine go into the boat, and before that even we're going to watch the bulwark staunchions get dry fitted and fastened through the planking. Later on, those temporary screws will be replaced with big bronze screws and the staunchions will be bedded in place, but for now they just need to be dry fitted so some other work can go on around them. Right, so it's time to put the engine inside the boat. And in some ways it would make sense to wait a little longer before doing this to get the engine room more prepared, but I really need to finalize some designs for parts of the drivetrain, including the thrust bearing mounting bracket is the big thing because it's really an awkward shape and it's very hard to design and measure it properly with the engine out of the boat. So we're just going to put it in and that'll make it a lot easier. If we need to lift the engine to paint around it and stuff later on, that should be very easy. Once it's in place, we can just lift it up and down to do other stuff in the engine room. To actually put the engine inside the boat, we're going to use something called a stinger, which is basically a custom fabricated arm which fits onto the forks of a forklift and extends its reach. So we managed to get the engine inside the boat and it's really cool to see it in place here. We went in through the cockpit opening really easily. Now, in between the engine and the prop shaft, we're going to have something called a thrust bearing, which will take some of the load of the prop and also has a universal joint in it, which will allow for some movement. Now, to mount that thrust bearing, we've actually made some additional bearers that are going to bolt into the engine beds. But because the space is so tight in there, they have to be a very funny shape to fit around all the frames and to fit around the engine. So we wanted to get the engine in so we could actually make sure that they fit and that the engine fits around them before we bolt them in. So now we've checked all that and it looks all good. We made a few adjustments. Now we can take the engine out. We're going to just lift it up and suspend it right here in the boat, and then we can bolt in those bearers and get it all painted and stuff before we put the engine down for good. So it's time to actually fasten the lead ballast keel onto the bottom of the boat. and it's going to be fastened with 3 bolts. We're going to drill those holes for the bolts with a barefoot auger bit, so it's like a regular auger bit, but it doesn't have the screw on the end, so it's not self-driving. And that's important because with the screw, it could take off too much material at once and really increase the risk of snapping the drill bit. Even with the barefoot auger, which only takes off material when you really put pressure on it, we're still pretty nervous about the possibility of snapping a drill bit, because if we were to do that, it would be very, very difficult to get it out. It could be a real problem if that's stuck in the lead, in the Purple Heart. It could be a real disaster. So we're going to go very carefully. We're going to clear the hole out very often and only take off a little bit of material at a time. Now, because the lead ballast keel is a little bit larger and heavier than original, we've upsized the keel bolts from 1 inch to 1.25 inches, and we've changed the alloy to Aluminium-Bronze or Aluminum-Bronze, which is a much stronger alloy of bronze. So I've been working with an engineer to make sure they're going to be strong enough. These bolts are so strong that in theory 1 bolt could support the entire weight of the ballast keel, and we've got 13 of them in there, and we want it to be so strong because if the boat gets very heeled over or even knocked down to 90 degrees, the weight of all that lead, 17,000 pounds, is going to be pulling down and attempting to bend or break those bolts. As the guys drill the holes, they're going to be lubricating the drill bit with linseed oil. There's a lot of other lubricants you could use, but linseed oil should work just fine. And then they're going to counterbore the bottom of the holes to accept the washer and the nut inside the lead keel so that those aren't sticking out the bottom of the boat.
So I'm about to weld on an extension for a 1.25 inch drill bit so that we can drill out all of our keel bolts. So got some cold roll steel here that we're going to add on to this 1.25 inch auger bit. It's about a 6 foot long extension, and that should be long enough for us to stand upright down below and drill comfortably through our longest section of keel timber and lead, which is about 4 feet long.
So Zeal and Patrick have drilled most of the keel bolt holes now, and they're working their way aft, and the next two are underneath the engine, so we need to move it. So this time we're just swinging it on the chain hoists here, chain falls, and we're swinging it out of the way so they can drill on here, and while it's out of the way we'll probably paint the engine beds as well.
Patty and Zeal here. We're drilling the final keel bolt hole. It's the longest of all holes at 48 inches long.
As far as we know.
As far as we know.
We don't know until the hole is drilled. We've got to go through a bunch of Purple Heart and a bunch of lead and miss 2 other centerline bolts that are in close proximity. We'll do our darndest.
Hey, who's wearing a better outfit? Leave your answer in the comments.
Through.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah, make it rain lead.
Tra-la-la. It's pretty though, huh? So, we got this gigantic hunk of lead that makes the ballast keel. We got some gigantic bolts that are gonna come down to hold the keel onto the boat. And those bolts have some gigantic nuts and some gigantic washers to hold the bolt on. And so we're drilling a gigantic hole to make room for all of those other gigantic things. This diameter represents the thickness of our bolt, and then this is the diameter of our washer, this blade here. And there's a little bit of a gap in between the blade and the center guide thing. And so there's like a little sleeve that comes out. Periodically we have to ream a reamer up there to spread the sleeve out, and then we just cut it off.
Wow.
Yeah. Also, YouTube, did you notice I got a haircut? I mean, nobody's said anything about that yet. It's kind of a big deal, but yeah.
So you guys just saw a boat called Pacific Swift get hauled out. She's a schooner from Victoria, Canada, but right now I'm standing underneath the stern of a boat called Pacific Grace, a sister ship to the Pacific Swift, and they're both owned by an organisation called Salts, who do a lot of work with kids, a lot of sail training, and we're going to have a look around Pacific Grace and meet Tony, who runs the boat and was involved in building both of these boats.
My name is Tony, and I work for an organization known as SALTS. SALTS is an acronym for Sail and Life Training Society. So we take young kids, usually teenagers, out on big schooners, big wooden schooners, to sea and give them a chance to really experience community together, which the boats are really instrumental in creating. Pacific Swift comes from, a long time ago, 200 years ago. It's one of the forerunners to the Baltimore Clippers. Pacific Grace is actually a copy of an original Canadian fishing schooner. They're slightly older boats. Pacific Grace is 20 years old. Pacific Swift is a little over 40 years old. Salts has wooden boats because it's the type of construction that we know, and we can survive as a non-profit by building our own boats, maintaining our own boats. And one of the reasons we come to Port Townsend is this is like a wooden boat mecca. So, you know, we're very well received as the builders of our own boats, and there's lots of expertise around. So it's just a great place for our new crew to start learning, you know, about maintaining these type of boats, and they're getting the best attention that they need.
So the engine is currently well out of the way, out of its original position. It's down here on blocks as well as supported by this chain hoist. And we moved it so that the guys could actually drill the holes for the keel bolts in this position under the engine. But I'm going to take advantage of the fact that it's moved to cut out this access hatch, which is going to go in this bulkhead so that the port side of the engine can be accessed and worked on, which will happen through this hatch from the master cabin in there. We're also going to paint this area while the engine's out of the way, paint the engine beds and stuff now that we know it all fits well.
These bolts are 1 and 15/64 in diameter.
All right, give it to us in round up at 64.
These are 1.25" aluminum-bronze keel bolts with aluminum-bronze nuts and washers that were made by PT Foundry, milled out for us for this project because, you know, they're hard to find. We're going to drive them all in and see how it goes.
Watchdog in there? Yeah.
Just for fun. that worried.
I'll go first.
Yeah.
Bong bong.
No, let now, boy.
Whoa! Whoa! Damn!
Show that to us again.
This was designed to be a sacrificial beater, and it didn't survive.
Yeah.
We got
The sacrifice happened sooner than expected.
4, 5, 6, 7 bolts in. So this lasted driving 7 bolts.
Hey, Zoo.
Yo!
You can't break this guy.
You got a big one?
So we now have the bilge painted in the engine room area, and for that we've used bilge coat, which is a paint designed specifically for bilges. It's very tough and resistant to oil and so on. And then so after the guys have finished tightening up these keel bolts, we'll put the engine back, and then they'll have access to drive in the final keel bolts just forward of this, where the engine is being stored right now.
What's going on, Patty?
We're gonna drive this bolt in about 3 feet, and we're gonna do that with hammers. And
Well, yeah, but what's special about this boat?
oh, it's the last one! I totally forgot. It's the last bolt.
It's the last
The
bolt,
whiskey
buddy.
bolt.
The whiskey bowl. As
Yeah.
soon as we get to finish today, we start drinking whiskey at like 11:15.
And before lunch.
Yeah, it'll be great.
Nice.
It's just about right as far as they're going down.
It's the original.
We decided to use the
Keel.
old keel bolt, the original keel bolt, as a driving rod. Send them down so that this touched every single keel bolt in the boat. So the spirit of the old tally-ho is within the new keel bolt.
Wow.
Sorry,
Isn't it?
I just have to cry.
Yeah, we didn't blow up this bash nut because it's got a lot more meat.
All right, well, the ballast keel is finally bolted onto the boat. It's officially part of the boat now, I guess, and that feels really great. It's sort of wrapping up this big ballast keel project, which has been a long time in the works. Of course, there's still a little bit of filling, fairing, and painting to do to really finish it off. But you can see behind me, there's been a lot of tar squeezing out of the joint between the ballast keel and the keel timber as those bolts were tightened up, and that's really good. It shows that we have a nice tight joint there between those two pieces. We've got the engine in the boat too, of course, now, and that feels really good. There's also been a lot of other work going on over the last couple of weeks, which hasn't been in this video, but that'll be coming up in future videos. Everyone here has been doing a really great job, so big thanks to the team, and a massive, massive thank you to everyone who has donated or otherwise supported this project. It does make a huge difference. It means that I'm able to keep making these videos and we're able to keep doing this work. So I really, really appreciate it. And I'll see you next time. Cheers.